everyone. This is going to be our last video of the semester. This is our second video in the secondary dominance, I guess two videos that I'm going to post, so this is the last one. So we had class today. We talked about 5-7 chords of 5s or 2s or whatever, just the secondary dominance of 5 or 5-7 of something else. I'll put like a little X there. So this is what we've talked about so far. Now there's another secondary dominant type, and that's going to be what this video is on. So if you think about that flow chart that we've talked about in the past, it always has like 5-7 in a box with 7, right? And then it goes to 1, correct? And what we call this box is the dominant function, right? Dominant function to tonic, which, you know, kind of leads into our cadences. If it's a 5-1, it's an IAC or PAC, right? If it's a 7-1, we still label that as an IAC, perfect authentic cadence or imperfect authentic cadence, right? So if it's 7-1, it's imperfect authentic, but the 7 is functioning. Remember that big term that we talked about last video is the function. So the 7 functions as a dominant. So that is where we are leading to in this video. Secondary dominance part 2, instead of 5s, we actually are going to be doing 7s of something, or 7 half diminished 7s of something, or 7 fully diminished 7s of something, right? So we're going to talk through that. Hopefully this video actually shouldn't be too long, because honestly, if you know how to build the 5s of something else, the 7s of something else isn't too hard, right? So I think maybe the best way to do this is to just dive right in. So you're going to have, again, 2 worksheets due for your homework, and it's going to be a very similar setup to last week, so that'll be due on Wednesday, right? So what I'm going to do is actually walk through a couple examples from your homework, and I think that might be the best way to approach this. Or maybe I'll do one really quick thing very quickly. So let's again take C major, right? So if we just, C major, here's our 1 chord. Let's say that we want to have a secondary dominant in a 7 way, right? Let's say that we want 7 of 5. We're going to just do a triad. We're not going to even do the full-on 7th chord, right? So, sorry, C major, right? So again, how we think this through, we're going to be tonicizing this key, right, of 5. This is how the progression would go, right? So what we have to do is first, let's imagine C major, right? What's the 5 of C major? That's going to be G. So we can actually just throw that chord right in there, G. Now, let's pretend that we're not in C major. Let's actually just think that we're in G major for a moment. What's the 7th chord of G major? The easiest way to just think about this is to take that G and just think a half step below G, and you get F sharp, and then you want to build a diminished chord on that. F sharp, A, C, right? You can do this with any key, honestly. So like, let's say we want a 7, fully diminished 7 of 2 in C major. And then it's always going to resolve to that denominator, right? So it's always going to resolve to 2. So sometimes I actually recommend skipping this altogether. Just figure out what your resolution is, and it's going to help you figure out what this chord is, right? So C major, what's a 2 chord? It's going to be D minor, right? So then you can build your D minor, right? D, F, A, no problem. Then think, what is the 7? Eliminate C major from your head for a moment and think, what is the 7 of D minor? So again, just think a half step below D minor, and you're going to get C sharp. So this is going to be a C sharp, E, G, and we want fully diminished 7, right? So obviously this means our triad is diminished and our 7th is diminished, which is not what we have here. We actually need a flat there, right? Because we have to lower it twice from major. All right, so that's kind of that. I'm gonna kind of just skip ahead to the homework examples because I think that's gonna help the most. But that was just like a little side thing of kind of how to figure it out and puzzle it out, okay? So the first one, first of all, I'm gonna make sure that it doesn't cut off on the top. I'm sorry about that from last video. I noticed that. So I'm gonna put it in the middle here. So this is your first worksheet for homework. This one is labeled secondary dominance 3, 1, 2, yeah, like 3. And this is all 7th chords that we're dealing with. So the first example is done for you, but we're gonna walk through it, right? So what we're gonna do, you are given a key signature. You are given a chord, and that's it. F sharp, A, C, E flat. So what we're first going to do in the blank above the chord, this is labeled number 1 right there, write a macro analysis of the chord, so root, quality, inversion. So first things first, this is stacked in thirds, so it is in root position, so you can just look right here, this is going to be your root, so it's going to be an F sharp chord of some sort, right? Quality, let's figure out the triad. F sharp, A, C, that's a diminished triad. F sharp to E. The way that I recommend thinking this through is what would F sharp to E what be to be major? E sharp would be major, right? And then this was lowered once, so that's minor. If this was flat, it was lowered twice, right? So a diminished triad with a minor 7th is half diminished quality, right? And then it's a 7 chord, right? Okay. For part 2, in the blank below the chord, say what the chord is. 7 diminished, 7 half diminished 7, or 7 fully diminished 7 of something, right? So we obviously figured out that this is a half diminished chord, so you can just make that a 7. Now, the easiest way to describe what this is of, it's going to be of something, is just go a half step higher than your root note if it's a 7, right? Because if you think about it, whenever we write 7 chords, even if it's not in a different key than what's labeled and stuff, a 7th chord is always only a half step away from its tonic. So you just think about a half step away from this F sharp, right? And you get G. So this is 7 half diminished 7 of G. So again, I just looked a half step above our root and I got G, right? F sharp, G is only a half step apart. And then, last but not least, we are in the key of, oh weird, your homework has 2 flats, but this says E major. Let's say that we're in B flat, because then that makes this like a really funny chord actually. Let's, I know the first one's done for you, so it's not even like this is getting any points. So let's say that we're actually in the key of B flat. Yeah? So then all that we have to do is label what that is. It's a 7 half diminished 7, because you're labeling this chord, this is a 7 half diminished 7th, right? Of G. So all that you have to do is count up from B flat, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's 6. So this is a 7 of 6 chord, right? All right, let's do the next one together. So again, I'm giving you homework answers, just saying. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna give you that treble clef. What is given to you is F sharp, C, G, right? So we have, good, and then you are given B sharp, D sharp, F. I mean, it's really F sharp, right? Cool, that's a tough chord to puzzle out. Okay, but that's fine, we'll do it, all right? This is actually a really great example because then I can talk about hypothetical keys and stuff. So B sharp, so our first goal is to, 1, figure out, okay, it's in root position, so this is a B sharp something chord. Ew. So what I always recommend doing when you have like a really weird chord like this, I always go off to the side and I write out what it is. We have B sharp, D sharp, and an F sharp. Now, obviously, we're not comfortable with thinking in the key of B sharp major or minor or whatever. It's not a normal key. This is what I call a synthetic key, is that it's like made up, kind of. So the way that I do it is that I'd find a key that I am comfortable with that's close to B sharp. So you know what's really close to B sharp that I'm comfortable with? I'm really comfortable with B major. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm just going to eliminate the same amount from each one. So I'm going to translate this to B. So I got rid of a sharp. D, I got rid of a sharp. F, I got rid of a sharp. Now that way I can kind of think about the quality a little bit easier, right? Because this is really hard to think about. You look at that and you're like, what is that quality? This one's a little bit easier because we're comfortable with B, right? And then we don't, B, D, F. That's a diminished, that's like a B diminished chord. Now if everything is raised in the same amount, this is actually also a B sharp diminished chord. Hopefully that made sense. Anyways, that's what I call synthetic keys and trying to figure things out. So I always bring it back to a key that I am comfortable with, right? So this is a B sharp diminished triad, right? So we don't need a 7. Step 2 is to look here and we're going to label this. This is a 7 of something. What is B sharp a half step away from? Well, I mean, it's a little tricky to think about. Maybe thinking about your keyboard for a moment might help, right? Draw a piano really quick. Sometimes this helps. Right? So we're here, B sharp is really like a C. What is it a half step away from? C sharp. Really easy. Then we're given the key of F sharp minor, right? Then we have to label this. This is a 7 of C sharp. What is C sharp and F sharp minor? F, G, A, B, C, right? 7 of 5. Right? And then our chord of resolution would probably be a 5. All right, so that was example 2. This is done for you. So if you get it wrong, that means you didn't watch this video. Great. All right, we're going to go down to that second part where it says building secondary leading tone chords. And we're going to do the first one together. So you're given a treble clef. This time you really are given E flat major. E flat major. This is what's given to you. Half diminished of 5. So to build these, we're going to kind of work the backwards way from what we just did for the first part. So first you're given a key, and what I say is let's figure out the denominator first, right? So E flat, denominator is a 5. So what is normally a 5 chord in E flat major? Again, you can always just use your fingers. E, F, G, A, B flat, right? So B flat is your 5. All right, and then you can always imagine your keyboard. This always helps me, right? We are now trying to find what is a 7 of B flat. So eliminate E flat from your mind for a moment. We're in the key of B flat, right? So here's your B flat. What's a 7 of B flat? Instead of going a half step up, because we're already on tonic, we want to go a half step down, right? So that leaves us here, A. Okay, so that means that this chord is going to be an A half diminished, right? So this is the 7th scale degree of B flat. If you're in the key of B flat major, you're going to get A as your 7th scale degree, right? I'm just going to erase that. So now all that we have to do is just build a half diminished 7th chord on A. Make sure that you throw in a natural, right? Because it's A flat in the key. A, C, E flat. That's a diminished triad. And then we need a minor 7th. A to G. Well, A to G sharp's major. A to G natural is minor. Perfect. So all that you needed for this one was one accidental. Great. All right. Now what we're going to go on to is your second worksheet labeled secondary dominance 4. Right? And we're going to go over 2 examples of that or so. Okay. So on this sheet, we're going to go through the first one together. That's already filled out for you. And it gives you, I mean, this one's already kind of filled out, but it does just give you a bass note, right? So you're given a B. And first, what we want to do is in number 1, build a fully diminished seventh chord. So your first line is just building fully diminished seventh chords, and we're going to label that as B fully diminished 7. So let's build that, right? So that means that we want a diminished triad with a diminished seventh on top, okay? So we have B. You can always just throw your notes in because you know that it's going to be like a stacked like thirds, right? So if we're in the key of B, keep that in mind, we're going to build a diminished triad on B. So B to D, yeah, and F. So normally a major triad would have F sharp and D sharp, right? But we have to lower 5 and 3 and then we get diminished. And then we have to figure out our minor seventh. The way that I think about that is B to A, oh sorry, we're in fully diminished. I'm sorry, we want a diminished triad. B to A sharp is major, right? Is major. B to A natural is minor, and then B to A flat is diminished. So I just kind of go through that in my head. And that means that we need to throw in A flat on top, which is what we have on the homework already labeled for us. So this is our B fully diminished seventh chord. Step 2 is that it gives you that it's a 7/7 of blank. How do we figure that out? All that we're going to do is take this root note and go up a half step. A half step above B is C, right? Step 3 is if we are in, oh, I guess just below us, it doesn't have labels. Sorry, I didn't know there's no numbers. So then all that we have to do is just say that if we're in the key of C minor, what is this? This is actually just a 7/7 chord in C minor, right? We just always see that show up because it's within this key. Now what we're going to do, we're going to say that we're in the key of A flat. So this is a 7 of something. It's a 7 of C. So let's think of the key of C. What is C in A flat? A, B, C. It's our 3 chord. Then you do it one more time. It's going to be like, let's say we're in the key of F. Again, it's a 7 of something. So what we need to do is, what is the Roman numeral of C in F? F, G, A, B, C. It's our 5 chord. Right? So that one's already done for you. Let's go on to the second one, because that also looks a little funny. That one looks like it's going to be a little bit trickier. Right? So again, you treble clef, and you're given a D sharp. So step 1 is that we want to build a D sharp fully diminished 7th chord. That's a little tough, right? Because again, going back to it, this is like what I call synthetic keys. This is not a common key that we're used to seeing, correct? So what I recommend doing is, again, take it off to the side. You know that you need a key that you're comfortable with. I'm really comfortable with the key of D, right? Not D sharp. So I'm going to translate that. What I'm going to do instead is actually just build a fully diminished 7th chord on D. D, F natural, A flat, C, we need a diminished 7th, right? So sharp is major, C is minor, C flat is diminished. Now what I'm going to do is translate that into our D sharp land. So D to D sharp, you added a sharp, you add a sharp, which just eliminates the flat, and then add a sharp, which also just eliminates the flat. So then what you get is D, F sharp, A, C. I hope that makes sense. That's how I translate harder keys in my head. Okay. All right. Then what we want to do, step 2, this is a 7/7 of something. Again, what we're going to do, we're going to look at D sharp. What is D sharp a half step away from? Think about it. D sharp to E. Right. So that means in E minor, this is a 7 chord that just naturally occurs, right? Now let's say that we're in the key of G major. 7 of something, right? So again, what we're going to do is it's going to be a 7 of E. What is E in G? G, A, B, C, D, E. It's going to be a 6, right? Okay. Or if we're in the key of B minor, it's going to be a 7 of, again, count up to E from B. B, C, D, E, right? So that's a 4. Boom. So this is showing you how one chord can be explained in E minor, in G major, in B minor. All that this chord is doing, if you were like in G major and you ran into this chord, it's tonicizing the key of E minor for like a moment. Then it'll probably resolve to E minor. So your ears are going to tell you, even though we're in G major, your ears are going to be like, oh, we're in G major, we're G major, and then you're going to hear this chord. You're going to like, oh, we're in like a funny other key for just a moment. And then it resolves to E, and your ears are going to be like, oh, I guess we're kind of in E minor. And then afterwards, we're going to be back in G major. So composers use this to kind of like nod to other keys to add a little bit more excitement. Okay, great. And then I'm going to just do one more. I'm actually going to skip. So if you go down to your second line, one's already done for you, right? It says build half diminished seventh chords. And then that first one is done for you. It's labeled E half diminished seventh. I'm not going to do that one with you. I'm just going to do that second one with you. Because I feel like I'm just going to walk through it one more time. I don't need to do it 2 more times. Here is our treble clef. And what you are given is an F sharp. Okay? So what we want to do, instead of building fully diminished, we're just building half diminished, right? So here we are. We're going to do half diminished on F sharp. All right, so what we need is a diminished triad. Let's first do that. So we have F sharp, A, C. Now check to see if that's diminished. Well, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp would be major. So F, A, C, F sharp, A, C is diminished, good. And then we need a minor seventh. So again, what I think about is what's a major seventh? It's going to be E sharp is a major seventh. Then E natural is a minor seventh, right? So you have your diminished triad, minor seventh. Then what we're going to do is label that as a 7 half diminished 7 of something. Again, it's the same process. What is F sharp a half step away from? Because this is the 7th scale degree of some key, right? So if it's the 7th scale degree of some key, it's going to be of G, right? Which then, labeled, if we're in G, this is your 7 half diminished 7th, naturally occurring in that key. Let's hypothetically say we're in C minor, right? So that's going to be a 7 half diminished 7 of G in C minor. So all that we have to figure out is what's the Roman numeral for G in C minor. G, D, C, D, E, F, G, right? 5. Okay, and then one more, this is D major. And that is going to be, again, 7 of G. So count up from D. D, E, F, G, 4. So if you notice, half diminished always naturally occurs in a major key. So everything that's half diminished is going to be of a capital Roman numeral. And then what we were just doing prior to this was a fully diminished chord. And that's always going to be in minor, right? So when you do that, it's always going to be a 7 fully diminished 7th / of a lowercase Roman numeral. I mean, if you saw my review video on 7th chords, I kind of talked about how in a major key, it's always a half diminished 7th. In a minor key, it's a fully diminished 7th, right? Great. Last but not least, so this is all your homework, so you should be totally fully prepared for your homework, and that's good.